and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today we're going to continue our 32 for 32 series with a look at the Baltimore Ravens. One hell of a kind of last 2 years, I guess you could say, for the Ravens. They start off 2020, back-to-back wins, disappointing 14-point loss to the Chiefs. Then they go 5-1, leave the bye week, lose to the Steelers. All of a sudden, drop 3 straight, have some Lamar COVID thrown in there. Things seem to be falling off the rails, but then they finish the season on a 5-game winning streak. Lamar Jackson Company had the highest point differential in the league. They get the playoff monkey off their back with the win over the Titans. Unfortunately, fell in the divisional round, 17-3 to the Bills, despite holding Buffalo to 220 total yards of offense. Obviously, Lamar getting that concussion as he threw that fateful pick six did not help matters at all. But obviously, we're looking at truly one of the better teams in the league still. Again, highest point differential exiting the regular season, not too many pieces away from being a legit contender, potentially as early as 2021. I have a very special guest on to help me break down the Ravens. He is Prime Minister of Degenerate Nation. The man is an expert on a lot of things and follows sports closer than just about anyone on this planet, but the Ravens just so happen to be his specialty. You can find all his picks and content over at The Action Network, and that is Stuckey. You can follow on Twitter at Stuckey2. Stuckey, thanks for the time, man. Happy football offseason. I know you're keeping things busy with all the other sports going on as well.
Yeah, always excited to talk some Ravens. It's a really fascinating team, not just because I'm a better first, and I grew up fan of the Phillies, and I still care about the Phillies and the Flyers, but betting is really just taking the fan out of almost every team I have. But the Ravens are the one team that I still actually care about, and I think they're just a really interesting case study just because of how unique they approach. They're just such a unique team, and then they have a bunch of different contract situations coming up, and how are they going to approach this offseason? So I think they're a fascinating case study this offseason in particular.
Yeah, truly, everyone. I mean, Stuckey knows these Ravens like the back of his hands. We worked with each other for a few years over at the Action Network. I remember just bringing up something about just a random Ravens game. Maybe they had a decent matchup here. And, you brought up like 2 or 3 of their linebackers, safeties, and very good points that a lot of people just wouldn't have even thought of in the first place. So good stuff there. Per usual, we're going to go through 3 team needs, go through some workload, 2020 related questions, and we'll get out of here with a bold prediction from Stuckey. So, Stuckey, let's start things off. What are your top 3 team needs entering in 2021 offseason?
Yeah, I don't think it's rocket science here, but if you look, we'll start on the offensive side of the ball. Interior, the offensive line. Look, last year, a lot of what went wrong is you had, first of all, going into the year, you thought you would have 2 top 20 tackles all year long. Unfortunately, you lose an all-pro tackle on Ronnie Stanley. He goes out for the year. Orlando Brown, now he's tweeting out he's a left tackle. I don't know. Is he going to get traded, or are they just going to say, look, we're going to play you this year no matter what? On the right side, I don't know. But they also had to replace Marshall Yanda, a Hall of Fame guard, and the interior was a mess. I mean, they couldn't find a center to snap the ball at times to Lamar. The pressure was just really bad. And look, Jackson hasn't been great in the playoff games that he's lost, but there's been other problems as well. The receivers, there's been drops. There's been a lot of poor offensive line play, especially this year. I think if you look back, his pressure rate is astronomical, and he hasn't been great under pressure, but during the playoffs, interior offensive line, I think, is a big need. And then receiver, obviously. Look, the Ravens have been trying to address receiver. It's that we could spend all day on the receiver and the Ravens. Are they going to go get a Galladay? Are they going to go get a Robinson? Probably not. I mean, they're actually in decent salary, but from a salary cap perspective, they're in decent shape compared to the rest of the NFL. Now, the salary cap's actually not going up because of COVID, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think they have enough money based on who they're going to re-sign to go out and get to get a Robinson, to get a Galladay. Are they going to settle for a Corey Davis, a Marvin Jones? Possibly. But they've been trying to do it through the draft, right? If you look at all of the young pieces they've drafted at receiver, has it worked yet? No. Absolutely not. So you could say, look, you obviously have to say receiver is the second option, but it's one of those things. I talk to some really diehard smart Ravens fans that say, we don't need to go get an Allen Robinson. We don't need to go get a Galladay because we don't throw the ball. And, it's like going out and getting a really nice car when you live, in the country and you work from home and and you live on you don't have paved roads. But I would love to see Lamar Jackson, who they say Eric DeCosta says that he wants to get him signed here long term. He only has 1 year left on his deal. And it's really, hey, look, we have a quarterback on his rookie. He's still on his rookie deal this year. Can we win a Super Bowl now? This is like the ideal situation. He wants to resign him before this year. I would love to just see what Lamar Jackson looks like with a true number one. Yeah. We saw it with Josh Allen. It doesn't mean that just because you give Lamar Jackson number one, his accuracy, some of his issues against man defenses are going to all of a sudden be fixed. But it would help a lot just to be able to say, all right, I'm going to throw to this possession receiver, this X on third down, and I can just go up. I can throw it up to this receiver. And then it obviously just says, okay, now Brown doesn't have to be a number one. He could just be your deep threat. It just shifts all the responsibilities down. So those are the two biggest needs. We go on and on about receiver. I'll stop rambling there. And then on defense, it's the edge. It's the edge rush. You have really young linebackers that I think can take a next step forward this year. The secondary is obviously great. The big wild card there is Tavon Young, healthy, and is he going to come back and contribute? What's going to happen with him? Because people forget, he was the highest paid slot corner in the NFL just a couple years ago. He's been hurt ever since. When he's in the slot, it allows Humphrey to play on the outside where he's even better, and everyone else kind of falls into place. But it's going to be the edge rush. It's a Judon Ngakoue. Maybe you franchise tag one of them, but they're going to need to get some edge rush help elsewhere because they're not keeping both, maybe not either of them. So I would say those are the three: interior O-line, receiver, and edge rush.
We are in agreement. And yeah, with the edge, I mean, look, this was the league's second-ranked scoring defense last year. Not many things to fix as it stands, but pressure was, if you had to pick an issue, probably the one issue they faced. Not necessarily because they couldn't get pressure with it. Look, they had the league's highest splits rate, by far, and just finished 18th in pressure rate. So, hey, you got Humphrey, Peters, Jimmy, all those guys in the back end. That's great. You have one of the few rare secondaries that can kind of hold up if the quarterback doesn't get under pressure. But let's help them out a little bit. Right now, only the Jets have fewer $20-21 allocated to their edge rushers. It just seems like it's been a while since we've seen them. I guess really since they lost Zadarius Smith, they just haven't really replaced him or, Suggs or any of these other guys over the past few years with a true blue chip edge rusher. And hey, if they can use one of these, high-end picks or even free agency to go out and get someone, that might be the missing piece of this defense to take them from, again, already great, but, to the number one unit in the league potentially.
Yeah, I mean, look, you could say all you want about Lamar Jackson, and he has room to improve as a passer. You could say what you want about the offense. Receivers, I think, dropped, 7.5% of passes, the league high last year. There's a lot of things you could say about the offense, but the Ravens are based on my power ratings, they're one of the 5 best teams as of now. A lot can change going into next season, which means they're going to have a chance. They're most likely going to be a playoff team, and their last 2 playoff losses, they statistically dominated the games. They couldn't convert a 4th and 1. They couldn't convert near the red zone, all these fluky things. But that's part of the NFL playoffs, right? It's one and done scenario. There's going to be fluky losses. There's going to be fluky wins. Look, 2012, Joe Flacco will go down in Baltimore Ravens history because he won a Super Bowl MVP and couldn't be stopped. But he completed a miraculous throw to Jacoby Jones with 13 seconds left, inexplicably got behind. So, these random wins and losses happen. The problem with the Ravens, I think that their offense needs to improve a little bit, is that there's this guy named Patrick Mahomes in the AFC who's going to be there, and they don't match up well with the Chiefs because they have to generate their pressure by blitzing. That is what their MO is, and every time they play the Chiefs, they still blitz, and then Patrick Mahomes, of course, rips apart the blitz as he does against everyone. So that's where I get really afraid of how the Ravens defense, their defensive identity right now, it can match up with almost anyone in the NFL, but probably their biggest competition in the AFC, the Chiefs, you don't really want to blitz that guy.
And we see it in basketball, I think more, especially when you have those smaller rosters, not 52 dudes, where you will see teams try to, in the past, match up with the Warriors or whoever the hell LeBron's on these days and all that. So in NFL, when we have Patrick Mahomes on team for 10 years, yeah, you probably should start to have some of your decision-making centered around stopping what looks to be, one of the best quarterbacks the game has ever seen already. Yeah. So great points there. I want to quickly go back to the offense here before we move on to some workload stuff because, yeah, man, wide receiver, it's not that adding a wide receiver receiver will fix all the problems. I thought you stated that very, very well. But why does Lamar have to be the only quarterback that like doesn't get the benefit of a great wide receiver? Hollywood Brown is fine. It's 2021. We can have more than one good to great wide receiver in the offense. Josh Allen got Stephon Diggs. Kyler got DeAndre Hopkins. Baker got Odell Beckham. Like, you just look at the Ravens right now, and I keep bringing up these cap figures. Like, they just aren't even spending much. Nobody has fewer overall 2021 dollars devoted to their offense than the Ravens. Lamar's on the rookie contract. Like, let's find out if it is a case where, you add Allen Robinson there and he's a waste of money. Okay, Lamar's your franchise quarterback. Now we know that for the future. It seems like now more than ever with them still on this rookie contract, 2021 is the year to try to add a high-end weapon to this offense. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine. We'll adjust moving forward. But man, like, I don't even think it's going to take away from Hollywood or Andrews. I feel like it just enhanced the whole damn ship.
Yeah, I mean, we said it before, Josh Allen, that he took that next step. There was a lot of the same criticisms that he was receiving that Lamar Jackson still gets. Just having that security blanket, that possession receiver on third downs, someone that can just go up and win against man coverage. It is just a massive asset to have for a quarterback. The problem is twofold. Number one, does a elite wide receiver want to come play for the Ravens? I don't know. Are you getting, how much of a workload are you going to get? That's a legitimate question. And number two is the Ravens they don't seem to, like, DaCosta does. They're such a great drafting team, and they kind of do everything in an economical perspective as far as these receiver. They do, like, all right, if I'm looking back at the Ravens, the last time that they went out and signed a big name receiver in the offseason, I mean, we're talking
old
Crabtree.
Yeah, Crabtree. Okay.
Crabtree. Yes. Jeremy Macklin was a guy that the Ravens fans got excited for, who did absolutely nothing. But on the flip side, they went out and got Anquan Bolden for a couple of years, who was one of the key pieces for them going to win the Super Bowl. That was a huge security blanket for Joe Flacco. So I agree with you. I don't think that they're going to spend top-end money, and I don't know if a top-end receiver would come to the Ravens unless you're like at the very end of your career and just looking for a ring. Yeah. I think that you have to go out and get somebody. I mean, maybe it's a Davis, maybe it's a Jones. I would love them. I would love them to bring in Galladay or bring in Robinson, who just needs to get on a good team. But I think it would do wonders for him. And then they can actually expand the offense. They say, like, well, we don't really need a number one receiver. A lot of the Ravens offense in 2019 was record setting, right? Record setting. Even though all they did was run the ball. 2020, not so much. The EPA per play, it dropped off a cliff, and that's because the league adjusted, right? So it's time for the Ravens to adjust. You can have some of these run concepts, but you have to start throwing to the sidelines. So some of that's on Lamar, but some of it's on the play calling, and some of it's on the protection, and then also at receiver. The talent just isn't there as of right now.
Yeah, far more complicated issue than just pinpointing all these problems on Lamar, like most like to do out there on the old Twitter sphere. Last point, it's the offensive line, the first need you brought up, because, to me, I almost look at that 2019 Ravens team like the 2017, 2018 Rams, where, you had good things happening in the backfield and receivers and Goff and Lamar and all that. But the offensive line being as dominant as they were in those seasons, I think, was really what kind of was the engine of those great offenses. And, they really never replaced, Marshall Yanda when he retired. Now Orlando Brown's like getting, I guess on the hot seat about whether he even wants to be there. Like, if they don't make these big moves at wide receiver, man, invest in the offensive line, because whatever you want to say about Lamar, look at any offense in the league, O-line's going to be where you're going to be able to get the easy yards. And at least in 2020, like you said, teams adjusted and they couldn't just overpower their way to those easy yards that were there all the time in 2019.
Yeah, Orlando Brown is going to be – that's going to be the interesting – like, I'm assuming that he comes back. Maybe he gets traded for – they fleece the Chargers, and I don't know. He ends up on the Chargers, and they get a receiver and a draft pick. But part of me thinks he's going to end up playing, and he would have to – I don't think he's going to hold out. But if you have him at least for a year, there's arguments now. Look, he's not happy. He's going to be a free agent. It sounds like he's going to go. Let's get something. Let's try and get what we can. Unfortunately, Bill O'Brien's not – in the league anymore, so we can't get like a Laramie Tunsil package. But but if you do have those two, you have two top 20 tackles, from a numbers perspective, I think PFF would probably agree based on their metrics. You have two. That's a great starting place. Now the interior was bad, but it was really young, so at least you got a lot of experience there. I think that you do need to go out and you need to sign someone, whether it's like Thuney from New England. There's going to be a couple guys that are salary cap casualty guys that are veterans. The Ravens like to sign those guys from they get compensation picks if you sign someone that was cut. So I don't know if it's going to be like a sheriff or whoever. There's a couple guys out there that I think they need to go. They need to go get a center or a guard, a veteran guy that has been there, maybe even like a Zeitler from the Giants, just someone that's a veteran presence that can help these young guys around them. Because I think Skura has to go. And someone that can just snap the ball, first of all. Like the fact that we couldn't get a snap in pistol formations, it did happen in the Lamar got his concussion on a snapped one over his head in the playoffs against the Bills. So it happened a number of different times. So I think they do need to address the offensive line no matter what. That they usually will do. It'll be interesting to see what they do at receiver, but I think they do address the offensive line. The younger pieces get better. Assuming you have Orlando Brown there, you have Ronnie Stanley back, so arguably be the best tackle in the NFL. And I think we might get into this, but it's probably J.K. Dobbins to the moon if you're looking for projection guy for next year.
Yes, sir. And we will go ahead and move on to our gut feel round. Again, Stuckey and I are recording this on February 16th. So still plenty of stuff that can happen between now and obviously the season starting. But we will be going with the roster as it stands, potential free agent draft additions, and then trying to figure out just who we might be targeting in Fantasyland. Want to start with Lamar Jackson, though, because look, the guy's thrown 62 touchdowns over the past 2 years, and we still have people making the RB playing QB jokes unironically. I get it. He's not your prototypical drop back passer, but we're still looking at the number 1 and number 7 ranked scoring offenses. Here's the thing, though. As you said, the league definitely caught up to a certain extent in 2020. Now, we've talked about, getting the O-line back on track, adding a true number 1 wide receiver. With that said, do you think we've already seen the peak of Lamar Jackson, or could we even see him, still just 24 years old, make a true progression as a passer? Or, again, is this just kind of what we have, and we're going to probably look back and say, hey, 2019, that was wild, but that was the best version?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating question. I think that having a really good reliable receiver would help. He does have to improve. And look, I go back and forth with, can you teach or can you learn accuracy? And I think you can to a certain extent, but I think that you're kind of at this point in the NFL, there's a range of where you are. And I don't think he's at the peak of his range, but I think that he can improve a little bit in how he throws, especially to the sidelines against man coverage. Yeah. The number 1 receiver will help there, but can he get there? And I think it has to be like this year or next, while he's still an elite athlete and an elite runner and one of the most dangerous weapons in the NFL, because he'll be 25, I think, at the end of next year. I think his birthday's in January. So if his contract's up and then you want to sign him, when do you start to lose? And this is probably a question you'd be better served answer. I'm more like cornerback. I don't want you after 30. Yeah. If you're playing man, if you rely on your legs and rely on them, like Russell Wilson, he doesn't need his legs, but he started to lose his really good speed, 27, 28. Now he has an arm he could survive on. So Lamar Jackson, he's not going to – I don't worry about the injuries as much. I used to worry about that when I first signed him. The guy just knows how to not take big hits. I know he just got a concussion. But I think that's overblown. Pocket quarterbacks get hurt all the time too. But he's going to – his elite speed, that burst, that cutting ability, that agility is going to decline over time. How much longer does he have that elite level of athleticism? I don't know. I mean, 2 to 3 years is definitely realistic. Is it 4 to 5, or is it 5 to 6, or is it after 2 to 3 it goes off a cliff? Can he compensate that kind of drop off there with an increased, accuracy and passing ability? I think there's room for improvement. It has to be play calling, protection, wide receiver, and it just has to be off-season work. If we don't see it really this year, I for one, and I love Lamar Jackson, I love watching him. If I was the Ravens, I would move on. I wouldn't sign him to a long-term deal if I'm not seeing any progression there, because I know that his athletic ability is going to decline, and how much money he's going to demand. And we Ravens fans will tell you that Joe Flacco got us a Super Bowl. Yeah. He got us Super Bowl MVP. It's great. You won a Super Bowl. We signed him to a huge contract, and then we made the playoffs one time in the next 5 years between 2013 and 18. It crushes you. A huge quarterback contract that he's going to demand, in a lot of ways deserve. It's going to absolutely hamstring your franchise. So this is the key year for him, I think. And I don't care about the playoff losses. He won 1, he's lost 2. There's a lot of fluky stuff in those, but I need to see that progression this year, because I know that the athletic ability is going to decline eventually. He's still got 2 to 3 years at an elite level there, but it's not going to be forever.
Yeah, I mean, look, we see quarterbacks, Brady, Breeze, and Rodgers, like the position lends itself to having a long NFL career better than just about anywhere else if you can play it at the right high level. But Lamar, he's unlike any quarterback we've ever seen, save from Michael Vick, who actually got to take, a good portion of his prime, quote unquote off while he was serving his time and that stuff. But there really aren't any comps. Look at him. We might be better off, to your point, almost viewing him as more of a running back wide receiver type, just in terms of his peak is going to come in the first 5-6 years of his career, while defenses still have to respect athleticism and play completely different coverages than they would otherwise. Because that's always kind of double-edged sword thing. It's that, Lamar, we look at his passing numbers, and a lot of times if you just look at, raw, yards per attempt and that, he's ranked up in the top 10, 12 with a lot of great quarterbacks. We all know that it's not quite the same because he's benefiting from these softer coverages. So if you take away those softer coverages, that is where things could get tricky. But yeah, this is going to be a major make or break year. I'm with you there. And hopefully Lamar can figure it out. But once the athleticism goes, it's going to be very hard to catch up with it. And yeah, I mean, as great as having that rookie quarterback playing at a high level is, on the other end of things, to your point, is having, that second quarterback contract not playing even at an average level. So, Goff, Wentz, I know these teams want to, re-sign their young quarterback, even if they show a small sign. But, I think getting out of that, potential bad second contract could be the move if they determine that is the way to go. Big fan.
Yeah, the only thing is that the Ravens have designed their team, so it's like, all right, are you going to get another Lamar type, which he could do, or are you saying like we still have an advantage? Because one of the Ravens' advantages is that we're a unique team, right? You prepare every week and you build your team around facing passing offenses, right? And then once a year, then you're twice a year if you're in the division, you face this team that's like a running team. That's like they have a completely different profile. This quarterback is really fast. It's hard to match up with. So the Ravens have built their team around this like unique, they're kind of zigging while the rest of the NFL is zagging. That's the intriguing part, but yeah, you're completely right. And he's seeing there's more teams that are starting to play a little more man last year and saying, look, we'll live with him running a little bit. But once you're not that afraid of him running, you're just going to see a lot more man. He's going to have to fit balls into tighter windows, which he hasn't been able to do. And it's a whole different ball game. So, yeah, I completely agree with you.
Fingers crossed, let's get him a receiver. But yeah, decision-making time is certainly coming up. Onto the running back room. Mark Ingram's out of the picture. Gus Edwards is a restricted free agent. I'm assuming they're going to probably bring him back on a reasonable deal. We'll see. But we got J.K. Dobbins there, seemingly as the lead horse. Many in the fantasy community are hoping Dobbins really breaks out, becomes a RB1 in 2021. How confident are you in Dobbins really taking the lead on things? Or is this could be a situation where at the end of the season, Dobbins and Edwards' touch count probably won't be all that different?
Yeah, I think that it's, I know it's a point of contention with a lot of fantasy people, how many touches Dobbins is getting. And I thought he should have been getting more all year. And then, you started to see him kind of emerge as the season went on. I think that, and I do agree that Edwards is going to come back, very reliable back. Yeah. But I think this is Dobbins' show. I think that from fantasy is not my area of expertise, but I think this is a breakout year for Dobbins. I think he's the feature. I think it ends up being like, at the end of the year, maybe he's 66-70% of the carries just between him and Edwards. I think he's ready to go. I think they unleash him here in his second year. And I'm a believer. And I think that because you're going to have presumably both tackles, because I think you're going to address the interior offensive line with someone, and then your other pieces got experience, or at least you would hope a little better. Your offensive line situation should be better. So, and it's his second year, and everything I've seen from Dobbins, and I'm sure maybe you're biased too, but I'm for different reasons, but I'm all in on Dobbins.
I'm absolutely biased for all my Ohio State Buckeyes that have made their way into the league. But yeah, man, look, he can do everything you can ask. I mean, guy averaged freaking 6 yards per carry to lead the league. I mean, look, I know Lamar, with his rushing ability, he's giving you those nice lanes on all the read options, looks and that. But truly, with the ball in his hands, Dobbins is special. The one thing I would just advise people to keep an eye on, will Justice Hill make this an annoying 3-back committee? Because Justice is fine, but that's the issue. And that's what Baltimore has been over the past 2 years. We can live with 2-back committees. In today's NFL, there's only a handful of backfields anyway that lean on one guy. So if Dobbins is sharing things with Edwards, that's fine. Justice Hill's the guy we need to keep an eye on. Last thing before we get your bull call, Stuckey, I want to talk about Marquise Brown because we've talked about bringing another wide receiver. But hey, man, Hollywood, who I learned this year when I said we need to take away his Hollywood nickname, is because he was born in Hollywood, Florida. So I will not take away his nickname any longer. But Marquise Brown scored or cleared 80 receiving yards in each of his final 8 games, despite not getting 10 targets in any of them. Very rough first half of the year. We've seen the flashes. Do you believe in Hollywood Brown as a legit wide receiver 1, or is he someone that's probably better off as a wide receiver 2 field stretcher type?
Yeah, I personally don't. I mean, he's shown flashes and he's an explosive player. He can but he's not going to be the receiver that you want to rely on a third down when you need a big first down. I think will be best served if he has someone else that's getting all the attention and you can get him behind the defense, which is what I think his best fit is for. So I don't believe him as number 1. Now the Ravens might say, we're not really a passing team. We're not going to invest in the position. That's our number 1. That's what they've said, I think. And they might argue that the tight end is their number 1 receiver. But I think that if you just get anybody, I mean, Corey Davis in there is your number 1. And you have him now. He's kind of the off receiver, doesn't get as much attention. He's not playing against as many number 1 corners. He can kind of try to get him behind the defense, use him in deep threats. That's where I think he's going to be most effective. I don't think he's a true number 1. I think he could be a productive NFL receiver as he showed in the second half of last year. But I think he's ideally as a number 2 and some other offenses, maybe a number 3 as a deep shot.
Yeah, again, it's okay. It's not illegal to have multiple great wide receivers in the same offense. Mark Andrews, obviously, I think we'd all agree is a legit number 1 kind of pass game option in his own right. Are you expecting too much from Boykin or Duvernay, or are they just kind of good complementary receivers? I know Duvernay, some of the design touches they were able to get him, that dude's pretty electric in the open field. It's just a matter of getting him the ball.
Yeah, I think it's how is he that polished yet? I don't know how much of a leap can he take. I'm not an expert in that area. I think that he has some potential. Boykin flashes some potential as well. I had some hope for Prochet. He has like the best hands in the NFL, but he can't get any separation. There's a reason he was drafted in the 7th round. So they've taken a shot on these guys. I mean, I think Duvernay probably has the highest ceiling from just an explosive potential, but I still need someone else in this receiver room, even if it's a run-first offense.
Unfortunately, that man was not my guy, Des Bryant. He caught it, and he came back and had 2 touchdowns. That's a great story coming back from the Achilles, but unfortunately, 2020 Des was not quite the artist we were hoping for. Stuckey, before you leave, man, give us a bold offseason take. Can be on the draft, free agency, or just a 2021 call.
All right. Well, it's got to be bold. Look, I don't think the Ravens can do anything bold at receiver. It's just who they are. It's who DaCosta is. They're going to build economically. They're going to build on the interior. So I think they're going to go out and get an offensive lineman. They will address the pass rush. I think they'll either sign. They'll probably bring back Ngakoue and Bowser. And I don't think that Judon will demand too much money. I don't think he'll be back. I think in the draft, they'll probably address offensive line, maybe corner, and then receiver. Maybe you get Rashad Bateman and hope he can step up. It's just dangerous to rely on a rookie receiver. You need him to come in and be the number 1. But I'll say my bold call, if you're looking for one, and the Ravens aren't a bold offseason team, but I'll say they end up signing J.J. Watt, and that'll make I think that they're like the 5th. If you go and look at odds, they're like plus 900. I know Watt, he wants to be on a Super Bowl contender. There's a lot of talk about him going to the Steelers, which would kind of make some sense, but they have so many guys at that position. And it would be, obviously it's a cool story if him and his brother would play on the same team, but also be a cool story if it was Ravens Steelers with the 2 Watt brothers. And look, the Ravens, they have all their guys at edge are like, are they going to re-sign them? Are they not? What could they bring? Could they bring Watt in for a cheap deal? And he wants to get on a contender. So I'll say that's my bold call.
I like it. Yeah. And you said it here with the Ravens. Every single offseason, they're making smart, not flashy moves. So it's kind of hard to expect them to be too bold, but that'd be great. Give me JJ versus TJ twice a year. And it does seem like, in that Ravens defense, with how much they're showing blitz and stuff, you could imagine the amount of one-on-ones they could open up for JJ could be just what he needs. And he said he wants to join a contender. And to your point, Ravens top 5 team, certainly worst spots to end your career in. That's going to do it, everybody. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Please follow my man Stuckey on Twitter at Stuckey2. That's Stuckey2. Truly, the guy took some time off for NFL, but if you're into gambling on hoops or anything else, you can follow him. Stuckey, where can the people find your picks and content?
Just follow me at Stuckey2 on Twitter, at Action Network app. All of my content's there. You can follow me on the Action Network app as well, at Stuckey2. Just go to the follow tab but check me out on Twitter. Everything I do, I'll tweet out there.
For sure. Yeah, love our friends over there at the Action Network, revolutionizing the way we follow and track our bets. That's good, everybody. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. He's Stuckey. I'm Ian. And until next time, take care, everybody.